all right there, Captain?
Behind the powerful war drama, Glory lies a hidden story filled with controversy, sacrifice, and secrets. These are the dark truths Hollywood never wanted you to know. Fact 1. Glory was based on the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment. This regiment was one of the first official African-American units in the Union Army. They were formed in 1863 under Colonel Robert Gould Shaw. At the time, most people doubted black soldiers could fight. The government paid them less than white soldiers. They were often given menial labor instead of combat roles. The 54th demanded to be treated equally. They refused to accept unequal pay. For months, they served without wages at all. Their stand inspired other black regiments across the Union. The regiment included both freedmen and former slaves. They faced discrimination not only from Confederates, but also from their own side. Yet they trained harder than expected. Their determination impressed Union officers. The 54th fought in several key battles. Most famously, they led the assault on Fort Wagner. That attack turned into one of the bloodiest moments of the war. Nearly half the regiment was killed, wounded, or captured. Their sacrifice silenced critics who doubted their courage. Historians called Fort Wagner a turning point in the use of black soldiers, but for decades their bravery was erased from mainstream history. The men of the 54th remained forgotten heroes. The film Glory finally restored their place in memory. It told the story America had ignored for over a century. But if you thought the regiment's story was powerful, wait until you hear about how the casting nearly derailed the entire production. Fact 2.
Will one day restore this union. May God bless us all.
The casting process was complicated from the start. Producers wanted a mix of established stars and rising talent. Matthew Broderick was chosen as Colonel Robert Gould Shaw. Many critics thought he was too young and inexperienced. Denzel Washington, Morgan Freeman, and Andre Braugher were cast as soldiers. Each brought incredible presence to the screen, but some studio executives doubted if audiences would embrace a mostly black cast. They feared the film wouldn't sell internationally. Hollywood at the time avoided such stories. It was a major risk to greenlight it. Actors also felt pressure to portray real men with dignity. They studied history to prepare. Washington and Freeman spent weeks training as soldiers. They learned to march, fight, and live like Union infantry. The commitment showed on screen. It gave the film authenticity, but tensions ran high on set. The weight of history was heavy. Some actors worried about stereotypes. Others feared the film would be misunderstood. In the end, their performances silenced all doubts. Denzel Washington even won an Academy Award. The casting became one of the film's greatest strengths. But the performances wouldn't have had impact without the brutal training that pushed the actors to their limits. Fact 3.
This is your front. This is your rear. This is your right. And this...
Before filming, the actors went through a military boot camp. They lived like real Civil War soldiers. They marched in heavy wool uniforms. They carried authentic rifles and equipment. They slept in rough tents with little comfort. The training was exhausting and painful. Many actors suffered blisters and bruises. Some questioned if they could continue. The discipline broke them down physically, but it built them up emotionally. They began to understand the hardships the real 54th endured. Director Edward Zwick insisted on this training. He wanted authenticity in every scene. He believed discomfort would make performances real. And it did. The exhaustion on screen wasn't acting. The sweat, the fatigue, the pain, it was genuine. The experience bonded the cast. They became a brotherhood like the soldiers they played. The training blurred the line between acting and reality. It gave Glory its powerful edge. It was method acting on a military scale. The result was unforgettable. But training wasn't the only challenge. The violence of the battlefield scenes shocked everyone on set. Fact 4.
Reload!
Reload!
Aim! Fire!
The battle sequences were designed to be raw and violent. Director Edward Zwick wanted no Hollywood gloss. He studied Civil War diaries for inspiration. He recreated the chaos with brutal detail. Explosions ripped through the fields. Actors were thrown into mud and blood. Extras screamed in agony. Bodies littered the ground. The violence was shocking for 1989. Critics called it one of the most realistic Civil War depictions ever. The studio worried it was too graphic. They feared it would turn audiences away. But Zwick refused to soften the truth. He wanted to show the real cost of war. The set became emotionally draining. Actors cried after filming battle scenes. The carnage felt overwhelming. It was more than a war film. It was a memorial in motion. The realism honored the dead. It shocked audiences into silence. It left theaters hushed. The violence burned into memory. But the realism extended even further, because the film's set conditions were brutally authentic too. Fact 5. Filming took place in Georgia. The heat was unbearable. Actors sweated through their wool uniforms. Mosquitoes swarmed constantly. Mud clung to everything. Rainstorms delayed production. Tents collapsed in the wind. Horses added chaos to scenes. Authentic cannons shook the ground. Gunpowder filled the air. The discomfort was relentless. Crew members struggled daily. The actors endured endless physical strain. Some fell ill from the conditions. Others lost weight during the shoot. Zwick refused to ease the realism. He wanted the suffering to show. The hardship bonded the cast further. They felt closer to the real soldiers' pain. The set became a test of endurance. The results gave the film authenticity. The misery was captured forever on screen. The conditions became part of the legacy. The suffering turned into cinematic power. But the suffering wasn't only physical. The film also exposed deep racial tensions behind the scenes. Fact 6.
You really think anybody's gonna put these boys into some real combat? Do you?
The film tackled racism head-on, but the tension wasn't only on screen. Some extras were uncomfortable working under black leads. There were moments of unease during production. Hollywood had rarely put African-American soldiers at the center of a Civil War film. The weight of history was heavy. Actors felt pressure to represent truthfully. Some crew members underestimated the importance of the story, but Zwick demanded respect for the material. Denzel Washington and Morgan Freeman set the tone. Their professionalism silenced skeptics. Scenes of racial abuse were emotionally draining. The insults shouted during filming were historically accurate, but they cut deeply into the cast. Washington later admitted it left scars. He had to remind himself it was acting. The emotional toll was real. Even white actors admitted discomfort. The hatred felt too close. Yet this realism made the performances stronger. It captured the pain of the era. The tension fueled the authenticity. The cast turned discomfort into power. The film refused to look away. But if the racial tension was hard, the whipping scene pushed things even further. Fact 7. One of the most powerful scenes shows Denzel Washington's character being whipped. It was based on real accounts of punishment in the Army. The lashings were meant to humiliate. Washington approached the scene with intensity. The tears on his face were unscripted. They came from genuine emotion. The director rolled cameras in silence. Everyone on set was shaken. The whipping left marks on his back. Washington said the pain was worth it. It was one of the hardest moments of his career, but it became one of his greatest performances. Critics called it unforgettable. The Academy took notice. The scene earned Washington his Oscar. The impact was universal. Audiences wept in theaters. The brutality revealed the truth of slavery's shadow. The image burned into memory. It became the film's defining moment. The scene still haunts viewers decades later. It proved the film's uncompromising honesty. Washington's courage elevated the film. The whipping scene became legend. But if one scene could shake audiences, the music made them feel it even deeper. Fact 8. Composer James Horner created the music for Glory. He blended haunting choir voices with orchestral power. The score elevated every scene. The music carried sorrow and triumph together. The Boys' Choir of Harlem was featured. Their voices gave authenticity and depth. The score's beauty contrasted with the brutality on screen. Audiences were left in tears. The music became one of Horner's finest works. It captured the soul of the film. The soundtrack earned critical acclaim. It helped the film win Academy Awards. The score is still used in documentaries today. It became timeless. The music turned battles into poetry. It made death feel sacred. It honored the fallen soldiers. The choir's voices sounded like ghosts. Horner said the music was a prayer. The score gave the film immortality. Even without images, the music moves listeners. The soundtrack became iconic. It proved music could carry history. The score still echoes in memory. But music wasn't the only artistry. The cinematography pushed limits of realism. Fact 9.
You think you're better than me? You think you're my judge? You ain't nothing.
The film's look was stark and raw. Freddie Francis was the cinematographer. He used natural light whenever possible. The battlefields looked cold and harsh. The lighting was intentionally unforgiving. Francis wanted the film to feel like a documentary. The mud and smoke filled the lens. The camera stayed close to the soldiers. Viewers felt trapped in the chaos. It avoided the glossy look of Hollywood epics. Instead, it felt immediate and dangerous. The long takes made battles exhausting. The shots lingered on suffering. Nothing felt staged or artificial. Even the quieter scenes had weight. The camera treated the soldiers with dignity. It made the audience confront the horror. The cinematography won an Academy Award. It set a standard for war films. Directors studied it for years afterward. The images became iconic. The realism was unforgettable. The camera gave history life again. But realism came at a cost, because filming those battles was incredibly dangerous. Fact 10. The battle scenes pushed the cast and crew to their limits. Explosions were set off just feet from actors. The blasts showered them with dirt and debris. Cannons shook the ground violently. Actors were thrown into chaos. The smoke made breathing difficult. Many suffered minor injuries. Bruises and burns were common. The mud swallowed boots and weapons. The heat from gunfire was overwhelming. The chaos was carefully choreographed. But accidents still happened often. Extras collapsed from exhaustion. Horses panicked during loud explosions. The river crossings were especially dangerous. Actors nearly drowned in the current. Stunt coordinators worked non-stop to keep people safe. But safety rules in the 1980s were looser than today. The danger gave the film authenticity. The fear on faces was often real. The battles looked terrifying because they were. It blurred the line between cinema and survival. The actors gave everything for realism. The danger became part of the legacy. But danger wasn't the only challenge. The film also faced serious backlash from historians. Fact 11.
Let me tell you something, boy. You can march like the white man. You can talk like him. You can learn his songs. You can even wear his suits, but you ain't never gonna be nothing to him.
When Glory was released, many historians spoke out. Some praised its authenticity and courage. Others criticized its focus on Colonel Shaw. They argued the black soldiers deserved even more spotlight. They felt the film still leaned too heavily on a white savior narrative. Director Edward Zwick defended his choices. He said the story came from Shaw's real letters. But critics argued this still sidelined the regiment's voices. Some Civil War experts also pointed out small inaccuracies. Uniform details weren't always perfect. Timelines were compressed for drama. Dialogue sometimes simplified complex issues. Yet most agreed it was far more accurate than typical Hollywood war films. The debates made the film more controversial, but the controversy kept the story alive. It sparked new conversations about how history is told. Universities began showing it in classrooms. Teachers debated its strengths and flaws. The backlash only increased its impact. It proved history on screen is never simple. The criticism became part of its legacy. It forced audiences to question what they knew. The film's flaws made people dig deeper, but the controversy wasn't just academic. The film also faced harsh reactions in Hollywood itself. Fact 12. Before Glory was made, Hollywood doubted its potential. Executives said Civil War films didn't sell. They thought audiences wouldn't care about black soldiers. Some called it box office suicide. Studios rejected the script multiple times. It took years to get funding. Even when it moved forward, skepticism remained. Executives pushed for more white characters. They worried about international markets. The director fought to keep the Black Regiment central. He refused to compromise the story. But the resistance was constant. Test screenings made studios nervous. They feared audiences would find it too heavy. Yet when it premiered, the response was overwhelming. Audiences wept openly in theaters. The film received standing ovations. Hollywood's fears were proven wrong. It became a critical triumph. It showed stories of race and history could succeed. The film shattered assumptions. It opened the door for more diverse war dramas. The resistance turned into reluctant praise. But while Hollywood struggled, the actors themselves carried emotional scars from filming. Fact 13.
He a weak, white boy. Beating on a nigga make him feel strong.
The story was emotionally draining for the cast. Scenes of racial abuse were difficult to endure. The whipping scene left Denzel Washington shaken. Morgan Freeman said it felt like reliving real trauma. Extras cried during filming. The insults used were historically accurate, but they felt painfully real in the moment. Actors struggled to leave those emotions on set. Some admitted nightmares during production. Others carried anger home after shooting. It was more than just a movie for them. It was a confrontation with America's dark past. Director Edward Zwick encouraged emotional honesty, but he also tried to protect his cast. The line between acting and reality blurred constantly. Washington later said he felt broken after some scenes, but he knew that truth gave the film power. The emotional strain bonded the cast. They became like a real regiment. The pain united them in purpose. The toll was high but necessary. Their suffering created unforgettable performances. It proved the story mattered deeply. But while emotions ran high, the costumes added another layer of brutal realism. Fact 14. The actors wore authentic wool uniforms. They were thick and uncomfortable. In Georgia's heat, they became unbearable. The weight made marching exhausting. Sweat soaked every layer. Mosquitoes bit through the fabric. Mud clung to the wool constantly. Actors lost weight from the strain. The rifles were also real and heavy. Each soldier carried nearly 20 pounds of gear. Boots gave blisters and cuts. Hats trapped heat under the sun. Actors fainted during long takes. Costume designers refused to lighten the load. They wanted the suffering to look real. The result was authenticity on screen. The discomfort showed in every step. It wasn't acting. It was reality. The costumes became a form of method acting. They forced the actors into the soldiers' world. It made the performances raw and truthful. The misery added power to the story. Viewers could feel the hardship through the screen. The heavy wool became symbolic of the burden of war. But even heavier than the costumes was the criticism about how the story was framed. Fact 15. One of the biggest criticisms was the focus on Colonel Shaw. Some argued the film centered too much on a white officer. They felt the black soldiers deserved equal narrative weight. Critics called it a white savior story. Director Edward Zwick said Shaw's letters guided the script, but even he admitted the balance was delicate. Morgan Freeman spoke openly about the issue. He said the soldiers' voices should never be overshadowed. The debate still surrounds the film today. Some say the focus helped the film get made. Others say it limited the story's power. The truth lies somewhere in between. Without Shaw's story, Hollywood may not have financed the film, but the soldiers' courage remains the heart of the movie. Audiences still connected deeply with them. Denzel Washington's role proved unforgettable. The white savior debate did not erase the power of the performances. Instead, it made viewers think more critically. It forced questions about who tells history. The criticism became part of the conversation. The film was flawed but groundbreaking. It still holds power decades later. The debate ensures the story is never ignored again. But while debates raged, the film's awards cemented its place in history forever. Fact 16. When Glory premiered, awards season took notice. The film received critical acclaim across the board. It was nominated for 5 Academy Awards. It won 3 Oscars in total. Denzel Washington took home Best Supporting Actor. His performance was hailed as legendary. The cinematography also won an Oscar. The sound design received recognition too. Each award added weight to the film's legacy. Washington's win was especially historic. It marked one of the rare times a black actor won in that category. The victory was celebrated nationwide. Audiences felt it was long overdue. The Academy finally recognized a story of black heroism. The win boosted Washington's career permanently. It proved he was destined for greatness. The Oscars validated the film's importance. It showed that powerful stories could break barriers. Critics could no longer ignore it. Hollywood was forced to pay attention. The awards gave the film immortality. It went from risk to triumph. The success silenced its early doubters. The wins cemented its cultural place. But awards weren't the end, because the film still faced harsh criticism in schools and classrooms. Fact 17. After release, Glory was shown in many schools. Teachers used it to teach the Civil War. It became an educational tool quickly. But controversy soon followed. Parents complained about violence. Others objected to racial slurs in the film. Some school boards banned it entirely. They claimed it was too graphic for students. Teachers defended its importance. They said it showed history truthfully. The debate spread across the country. Some schools reinstated it after protests. Others kept it banned for years. Students who did watch it were often deeply moved. It made history feel real and painful. The controversy gave the film even more attention. It became part of cultural debates. Was truth too graphic for the classroom? Or was it essential for education? The arguments never fully ended, but the film's use in schools proved its value. It changed how history was taught. The controversy made it unforgettable. The classroom debates became part of its story, but schools weren't the only battleground. The film also sparked conversations among veterans and descendants. Fact 18. Descendants of the 54th Massachusetts watched the film closely. Many were emotional seeing their ancestors honored. Families had carried these stories for generations. They finally saw them told on the big screen. Some descendants visited the set during filming. They were consulted for authenticity. Their reactions were powerful and tearful. For them, the film was personal. It was family history reborn. The premiere was deeply moving. Some families wept during the Fort Wagner scenes. The recognition meant everything. It gave validation after years of silence. It preserved their legacy for the future. The film gave their ancestors immortality. Descendants called it long overdue. They praised the actors for dignity and respect. They said the film gave their families justice. Their voices added authenticity to the release. The connection made the story real. It wasn't just history, it was living memory. The legacy became intergenerational. Families felt pride at last. The Descendants' praise sealed the film's importance. But the legacy reached even higher when the film influenced future Hollywood war movies. Fact 19. Glory set a new standard for war cinema. Its realism influenced directors for decades. Steven Spielberg studied it before making Saving Private Ryan. The handheld camera style carried forward. The brutal honesty inspired future filmmakers. It showed war as chaos, not glory. The influence spread beyond war films. Historical dramas borrowed its raw approach. The emotional depth became a model. Directors admired its courage to show failure. The score style influenced soundtracks for years. The impact reached far beyond 1989. It helped create a new wave of serious war cinema. Audiences demanded realism afterward. The days of polished epics were over. The handheld grit became the new norm. It shaped expectations permanently. It became a teaching film for directors. Even decades later, its mark remains. The industry acknowledged its influence. It wasn't just a film, it was a shift. It created a new cinematic language. The influence was undeniable, but influence wasn't its final gift. The ultimate dark truth is how it reshaped America's memory of the Civil War itself. Fact 20. Before Glory, the Civil War was told mostly through white perspectives. Black soldiers were sidelined in history books. The 54th Massachusetts was barely mentioned. The film shattered that silence. It forced America to confront forgotten heroes. It gave black soldiers their rightful place. It showed their sacrifice and courage. It changed how classrooms taught the war. It influenced museums and memorials. It inspired documentaries and new research. The narrative of the war was altered permanently. The film didn't just depict history, it reshaped how history was remembered. It honored the men erased from memory. It made them immortal on screen. It gave their descendants pride. It gave America truth. The film became more than cinema. It became cultural correction. The change still echoes today. It shifted the nation's memory forever. The forgotten were forgotten no longer. The 54th Massachusetts finally stood tall. Their legacy was restored in full. And that's when everyone realized Glory wasn't just a film. It was justice, long overdue, reborn on screen.